I came home to silence and an empty desk where my dream machine once stood. There was something hostile in that silence. Not the quiet of peace, but the kind that wraps around your neck and waits. I dropped my keys into the bowl by the door and kicked off my shoes, glancing toward the hallway. The kitchen light flickered with its usual laziness. Something smelled like reheated pasta. But what stopped me cold was the view into the living room, the space where I'd built a world of my own. Gone. Completely gutted. The corner desk was still there, but hollowed out like a corpse. The wires dangled uselessly, the surge protector unplugged and coiled. A thin layer of dust outlined where my custom tower used to stand. My monitor, my keyboard, my Wacom tablet. All of it erased. I felt it before I heard her. Mom. We needed the money, she said from behind the fridge door. Just like that. No apology, no warning. For what? My voice barely carried. Groceries. Rent. Basic things families need to survive. My jaw clenched. So you sold it without asking me. Linda Hale shut the fridge with a sigh and walked over, wiping her hands on a dish towel like she just cleaned a mess. It was just sitting there. You weren't using it today. And it's not like you paid for the electricity it took. I worked for 3 summers and 2 Christmas breaks to build that thing. She gave a small, cold laugh. It's not about the computer, Sabrina. It's about priorities. Your dad and I had to make a decision. My father, seated at the table, didn't lift his eyes from the paper. You live under our roof. Don't forget that. I turned toward him. So that means you can take whatever you want. No, it means you're lucky we've let you coast this long. Coast Chloe walked in, her thumbs flying across her phone screen. She flopped onto the couch, chewing gum with slow, calculated snaps. You're being dramatic, she muttered. It's not like it was a MacBook. I ignored her. How much did you get for it? Linda folded the towel neatly, like she was folding me out of existence. 3,000. Maybe a bit more? I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. 3,000. It was worth nearly 4. Well, she said, voice clipped, then you should have sold it yourself. Chloe chimed in without looking up. Actually, I was thinking of going to Cherry Creek tomorrow. They've got a drop on the new Samsung Fold. Might check it out. Is that where the money went? I asked, my voice breaking into something sharper. Don't talk back, Dad snapped. We've done more for you than you ever did for us. A long pause fell between us, the kind where even the walls hold their breath. I didn't argue. I didn't scream or throw anything. I just turned and walked away. Back in my room, the door clicked shut behind me. My heart wasn't racing. It was focused. I moved to my old desk, the one with uneven legs and pen marks from high school projects, and opened the bottom drawer. From beneath a stack of worn notebooks, I pulled out the black one, cloth-bound corners, frayed familiar in my hands. I wrote PC sold, $3 to $800, no consent. Date Sept. 8. Then I signed it with care. I sat there for a while. The hum of the house moved around me like a stranger. No one knocked. No one cared. And I didn't expect them to. I didn't yell because they wouldn't have heard me. I documented instead. Like a crime scene. Every fact, every figure. Truth matters more when no one's willing to admit it aloud. In the silence, she unlocks her old phone and starts scrolling for voice recorder apps. They didn't just take my computer, they used my name to open a new line of credit. Monday afternoon, I was curled in the faded armchair at the college lounge pretending to study while my brain floated somewhere between last Friday's betrayal and a numb sense of free fall. My laptop was gone. My work portfolio files, designs, even the calendar I used to make sense of life obliterated in one stupid sale. The buzz of my phone cut through my haze. A text from Dylan lit up the screen. Dylan Carter. Hey, did you authorize this Best Buy card? My stomach tightened. I stared at the message. Best Buy. I opened my banking app and jumped to the credit report section. My hands were trembling before I even typed the password. A new account. Opened 3 days ago. Under my name tied to my social security number. The issuer Citibank. Store Best Buy. Limit $7,500. Current balance $6,308. I scrolled through the charges TV, soundbar, smartwatch, gaming laptop. Everything Chloe had been ranting about on social media for weeks. It wasn't subtle. I called the number listed. The robot voice confirmed it. Welcome, Sabrina Hale. For account services, press 1. They weren't done taking. They were building their new lives in my name. By the time I got home that night, my breath had gone flat, my voice sharper. The hallway felt smaller, darker. Chloe's laughter floated from the den, something loud and bubbly on TV. I found Mom in the kitchen chopping lettuce like it was therapy. There's a credit card under my name, I said. She didn't look up. Yes, it was opened 3 days ago. Best Buy, my social security number. Over $6,000 charged. Now she looked up. Her eyes didn't blink. We needed a few things. For the house. For Chloe, I corrected. We're one family, Sabrina. Chloe is you. No, she isn't. Linda dropped the knife gently. You weren't using your credit. This helps us build it up. That's fraud. She exhaled. It's called being a parent. Sometimes you have to make decisions for your children. That ended when I turned 18. She wiped her hands and turned to the sink. You should be grateful we didn't ruin your credit with something worse. Chloe strolled in, wearing new platform sneakers, waving a phone like a trophy. Best Buy has same-day pickup, she chirped. Love that for us. I stared at her. She winked. You weren't using it anyway. Something hard in me stopped shifting. I didn't speak. I just walked to my room, heart drumming against my ribs like fists on a locked door. That night, I downloaded 3 voice recorder apps. I tested each one. Labeled folders. Backed up to the cloud. I plugged my old phone in and hid it under a stack of socks set to voice-activated mode. They'd stolen money hardware credit, but what mattered now was proof. Not yelling, not pleading. Evidence. Dylan texted again. Want me to help track transactions? I've got a spreadsheet you can use. I answered, yes. Start with Best Buy and Chase. I'll log the rest. He didn't press. He never did. That's what made Dylan different. Around midnight, I combed through the paper trail emails account, updates, delivery notices. In my dad's office drawer beneath tax files, I found a receipt folded like a secret. Dated Sept 8, total $3,800, notes PC parts plus tower, signed S. Hale. It wasn't my handwriting. I brought it to my room and slid it into the black notebook beneath the entry from last Friday. My name was being used like a skeleton key. They weren't just rewriting my present. They were editing the past. I sat on my bed, stared at the ceiling for a long time. Then I picked up the burner phone and pressed record. She whispers into her phone recorder, "They made me vanish on paper. Now I'll make them reappear." She posted a shopping haul worth $1 or $200. I recognized every item because I paid for them. Thursday afternoon, I was curled up on Dylan's sofa with a microwaved quesadilla and a throbbing knot behind my eyes. The kind of headache that doesn't fade, just shifts shape. My phone buzzed, and when I looked, it wasn't a text. It was Chloe plastered across my feed. A new reel. 60 seconds of glittering joy. Caption: Retail therapy does wonders. Haul. Big spending at spoiled. I tapped play. Her face filled the screen, cheeks pink with faux innocence, a sparkle filter dancing around her like she'd stepped out of a teen drama. Okay, guys, she chirped. I got the cutest haul this week. First up, this leather crossbody. Can you even? Then these Stan Smith's iconic. And wait for it. AirPods Max in rose gold. My stomach clenched. I recognized the jacket, the earbuds, even the notebook set I'd been eyeing, but never bought. All of it. Paid with my name, my credit, my silence. Dylan leaned over from his desk, brows furrowed. That the stuff you flagged last night, I just nodded. He opened his laptop. Let me cross-check the purchase logs. His fingers moved fast. In less than a minute, he pulled up the transactions from my Best Buy and Amazon logs. Matches exactly, he muttered. Time stamped, same totals. Your card. I didn't reply. I just stared at the screen as Chloe giggled in slow motion. A cascade of likes flowed across the bottom corner, hearts, fire, emojis, clapping hands. The comment section was worse. A vanity rush. She's a whole vibe. Michelle, undone. Okay, rich girl, go off. A Kylie Bliss. Link the jacket. PLs. I'm obsessed. The room felt smaller. Dylan reached over to mute the video, but I shook my head. I want to hear it, I whispered. Later that evening, back in my room, I scrolled through my voicemail archives out of instinct, trying to escape the sound of Chloe's laughter still echoing in my skull. Most were junk insurance updates, old study groups, but one near the bottom caught my eye. Grandpa Edward. Dated 3 years ago. He died last winter. I played it expecting static. Instead, his voice hummed gently, gravelly with age and truth. Sabrina, my girl. You don't need to shout to be heard. But when the time comes, speak with truth, even if they call it rage. I didn't realize I'd been crying until I tasted salt. My hands shook as I deleted my Instagram. Every post, every DM, every tag from Chloe pretending we were best friends. Then I locked my accounts, changed passwords, enabled two-factor on everything. An hour later, Linda knocked on my door. Was that necessary? She asked. What? The whole dramatic purge. People are going to think you're unstable. I didn't answer. She didn't deserve one. She stood there another second, then sighed. Overreaction, she muttered, walking off. That night, I wandered into the kitchen after everyone else was asleep. The silence buzzed. I stood in the same corner where they told me the PC was gone, the spot Chloe danced around in her reel. My vision blurred with something hotter than tears. I raised my fist and slammed it into the drywall, not hard enough to break it, just enough to feel the sting. The protest of skin and bone against resistance. Pain was real, credit scores weren't. I slid to the floor, cradling my right hand. A purple bloom was already forming under the knuckle. I pulled my hoodie sleeve down over it. Evidence of feeling, of fighting back, even in the dark. The notebook waited on my nightstand. I opened it, flipped past the PC entry, the credit card logs, the receipt. She writes in her notebook, the money they took was fuel. Let's see what burns. Mom handed Chloe a gold lipstick tube and said, smile more. It opens doors. Mine had all been slammed shut. The mall's overhead lights reflected off Chloe's hair like she was the center of the world. Or maybe just Mom's. I trailed behind them, 3 steps off rhythm, like a shadow they hadn't invited. Chloe squealed when the sales rep handed her the tiny bag, a square glossy Chanel pouch with tissue paper fluffing out like a gift to royalty. Try it on, darling, Mom urged. Chloe unscrewed the cap with theatrical flair. The lipstick gleamed a shade called Rouge Elegance. She dabbed it on, pouted at the mirror, and grinned. It was the kind of grin you'd give to cameras, not people. The sales rep nodded approvingly. Lovely on her skin tone. Mom smiled. Put it on the platinum card, please. I blinked. What platinum card? Mom didn't look at me. She slipped a silver embossed card across the counter. Chloe smirked. She got it this morning. Emergency use only. Mom's idea. I almost asked what kind of emergency required a $70 lipstick. Instead, I watched as Chloe added a full skincare set, a bottle of perfume and 2 extra lip colors, one for her best friend Tasha. Gifts, she chirped. We walked out into the parking garage. Chloe swung the glossy bag like a trophy. I walked slower, letting their voices blur behind me. At home, the table was already set. Steak night, Dad's idea of tradition. We sat down, Linda at the head, Marcus at the opposite end, Chloe to his right, me to the left. The family axis revolved around her. Dinner was punctuated by wine pours and stories from Chloe about her productive shopping trip. Marcus chuckled. That platinum card already paid for itself in smiles. Linda nodded, swirling her glass. She knows how to present herself. That matters. I cut into my steak too forcefully. The knife squeaked against the porcelain. Don't be so tense, Sabrina Marcus said. You could have been like her if you smiled more. I looked up. If I smiled more? He shrugged. Presentation counts. Chloe took a dainty bite of asparagus and grinned. It's not my fault I'm the favorite. The table erupted in laughter like it was all just a sitcom moment. I stood up without saying a word, walked to my room, closed the door behind me. I sat in silence, letting the conversation play back in my mind like a toxic loop. I opened my recording app and tapped play on what I had captured under the table, Linda's voice, calm and cold. This family is an investment. We fund what returns value. I stared at my reflection in the darkened window. Chloe's room was lit across the yard. She was dancing with the lipstick in hand, probably filming another story. My own face, framed by shadows, looked hollow. I whispered not to myself, but to something deeper. You were right, Grandpa. Rage isn't always fire. Sometimes it's the freeze after. I picked up my phone and opened the thread with Dylan. I hit record. It's time I said, my voice low, but steady. We go quiet, but not passive. I sent it. Then I set my phone face down, pulled the blanket over my bruised knuckles, and exhaled into the dark. This wasn't silence. It was sharpening. The key Grandpa gave me wasn't for a lock. It was for the truth. It had been years since I'd stepped foot on this porch. The wooden steps creaked under my weight, familiar yet foreign, like I was waking a house that had been holding its breath. Grandpa's studio always stood slightly apart from the main house, as if even in life he needed space from the noise, the expectations, the curated perfection of the Hale name. Dylan parked down the block, just in case Chloe or Mom happened to drive by. I appreciated that kind of silence, one that didn't demand anything from me. "I'll start in the back," he said, grabbing a pair of gloves and a trash bag. I nodded, key clutched in my fist. The brass was tarnished, but it felt warm in my hand as if it had been waiting. I stepped inside. The scent hit first cedar old oil paints and something else. Memory. Sunlight filtered through warped blinds, casting slanted shadows across a room frozen in time. On the shelf were labeled boxes. Hale Architecture, 1984-1996, Edwards Essays. Not to be opened until... The last label had peeled off. Dust blanketed everything like snow no one wanted to disturb. Against the far wall, beneath a faded portrait of Grandma in her youth, sat the lockbox. I dropped to my knees. The key slid in without hesitation. A clean click. Inside 6 cassette tapes neatly labeled in Grandpa's handwriting. For Sabrina Courtroom, 1991. If they try to erase you, Linda, be careful, and 2 blank. Underneath, wrapped in wax paper, was a letter. My name scrawled across the front. The paper crackled as I opened it. Sabrina, they will rewrite you if you let them. So don't. The truth has sharp corners. Carry it anyway. Grandpa. I blinked away the sting in my eyes and pressed play on the nearest tape. Grandpa's voice, calm, measured, unwavering, spilled into the room. If they ever make you feel erased, go find your own pen. Timing matters, yes, but persistence. That's what finishes the story. Dylan appeared beside me, crouching. You okay? I nodded. I think I'm finally starting. We worked for over an hour. He swept cobwebs from the windows, and I cataloged the tapes, placing them in a canvas bag. A click sounded behind us. Someone at the door. It was Mrs. Gaines, the neighbor, with a voice like newspaper pages turning. I saw your car, she said. Thought I'd stop by before the vultures do. I stiffened. She stepped inside, eyeing the studio with fondness. Your granddad had this place humming. Said it was where the world finally made sense. I tried to smile. He left more than blueprints. Her gaze narrowed. Did he ever mention Chloe's expulsion? My breath caught. What she leaned in. 2 years ago. Eastwood High. Caught cheating twice. School board tried to expel her the first time, but your mother made calls. The second time, they didn't bend, and no one told me. Her face softened. They didn't think you needed to know. I looked down at the letter again, the ink slightly smudged from my fingertips. I suddenly saw it differently. Not just a warning, a nudge. Secrets rot? When sealed too long, Mrs. Gaines murmured. Your grandpa believed light cures most things. As she left, I noticed something buried under a stack of old legal pads, a small black envelope thinner than the rest. Inside was a notarized document dated 2 years ago. Grant deed of property, Hale Studio. Sole owner, Sabrina Hale. My hands trembled. No one had mentioned this. Not Mom, not Dad, not even at the funeral. Dylan leaned over my shoulder. "It's real signed, stamped, and certified," I whispered. "He gave me this before he died. They just never thought I'd look." Outside, the wind rustled the dry leaves. A quiet storm waiting to speak. I folded the letter, held it to my chest, and stared at the studio door, the same one Chloe used to slam every time she didn't get her way. Now, it belonged to me. Not just legally, but with purpose. This wasn't just about owning a space. It was about reclaiming my voice. I had been erased on paper in dinner conversations and family photo albums. No more. She folds the letter, stares at the studio door, and says, "Let's make some noise." 10 days, the lawyer said. Then the window closes. What window, I thought? The one they tried to brick shut. Morning clung to the Hale house, like guilt, silent, heavy, unspoken. The kitchen still smelled faintly of burnt toast and Chloe's perfume. I slipped out unnoticed, walking past the hydrangeas Dad had promised to prune next weekend 3 years ago. They bloomed anyway, defiant and overgrown. Maybe I would too. Mr. Reese's office was 3 blocks from campus, in a sun-bleached building with blinds drawn too tightly. He looked smaller than I remembered, as if the files on his desk weighed more than years. He gestured to the chair across from him. "I wish we were meeting under better circumstances," he said. "Your grandfather left a trust specifically tied to the studio." My fingers tightened around the strap of my bag. "He didn't tell me it had conditions." He meant to, Reese said, gently. "The trust gives you 10 business days from the date of legal notification to claim the property. After that, it defaults to next of kin." I blinked. "Next of kin? Meaning my parents." He nodded. "Unless you contest it. For that we need proof. Patterns of abuse, financial negligence, evidence that the default beneficiaries do not act in good faith." My throat tightened. "I have recordings, notes, receipts." I started documenting everything. His brows lifted slightly. "Then we may stand a chance. But we need the original deed. Without it, their lawyer could argue your grandfather changed his intent." When I left the folder he gave me, felt like it was stitched with heat. Dylan stood across the street sipping gas station coffee like it was a coping mechanism. "Well," he asked, pushing off his car, "I have 10 days to prove I was supposed to have what they're trying to steal." He held the passenger door open. "Then we start now." Back at the studio, the scent of old wood and dust wrapped around us like a second skin. Grandpa's desk loomed in the corner, familiar, dignified. I opened the drawer I hadn't yet touched. A cassette lay flat under a yellowed napkin. On it, in faded Sharpie, "For the day they say you don't belong." I popped it into the deck. Grandpa's voice, weary but firm, filled the room. "If you're hearing this, then they've done what I feared," he began. "Linda started talking to the family accountant after my second stroke. She told him I was losing memory. I wasn't. I wrote everything down." My spine straightened. "She moved funds behind my back, told Marcus to keep Sabrina out of meetings, said the girl was too quiet to own anything, that she wouldn't fight." Dylan swore under his breath. I paused, the tape heart pounding. I hadn't expected clarity. I'd hoped for it, sure, but this was a confession. "This changes everything," I whispered. Dylan nodded. "We log this. We date it. We back it up. Twice." That night, we started building the case. I created a file named 10 Days. Inside it, audio clips, images of receipts, screenshots of Chloe's Instagram hauls, transcriptions of Dad's dismissive outbursts. Dylan suggested a timeline chart, every infraction plotted and sourced. When I hesitated, he said, "It's not petty, it's self-defense." Later, back at the Hale house, I found Chloe in the kitchen. She was stirring yogurt like she expected applause. "Wow," she said, not even looking up. "You're really going for this?" "Huh, gonna fight the whole family for one crusty building?" I didn't answer. My phone was already recording in my pocket. She smirked. "You really think you'll find the deed? Newsflash, we looked. There's nothing. You're wasting your last college semester playing scavenger hunt." Her words stabbed, but not deep. They didn't need to. I had armor now. "Good night, Chloe," I said evenly, "and good luck explaining your shopping sprees in court." She blinked, caught off guard by my tone. But I didn't linger. I stepped outside, letting the door close behind me like a period. Under my comforter that night, I played Grandpa's recording again. Not for strategy, but for comfort. To hear anyone speak truth without flinching. My phone buzzed. A message from Mr. Reese. Find the original deed before Oct 6. Without it, they can contest everything. You know what's worse than being lied to? Hearing the lie in your own mother's voice on tape. The studio smelled faintly of turpentine and old cedar. I sat cross-legged on the rug. The edges of my sleeves tugged over my fingers. Dylan crouched beside the vintage tape deck fingers, adjusting knobs on the small audio converter he'd brought from his apartment. We'd gone through hours of Grandpa's ramblings. Half were philosophical musings, some just soft humming. Then it clicked. A date scrawled in faded ink on a cassette, March 3rd, 2023. A day I vaguely remembered because Chloe had suddenly bought a new phone and told me to just chill when I asked how. The reel spun, and her voice emerged clear low. Too confident for comfort. She never checks. I just use her details. It's fine. Sabrina doesn't fight back. She never does. Silence. I didn't speak. Neither did Dylan. He only leaned in and hit pause like the audio had burned through his fingers. "That's your mom?" he asked. I nodded. We digitized the clip. Dylan enhanced the audio, boosted the mids, cut the static. My mother's voice came through so clearly it felt like she was in the room, whispering in my ear. I had to leave the studio for a moment just to breathe. Later that night, when the file was ready, I uploaded a 20-second snippet to an online support forum, one for adult children of narcissists. I didn't use my name. I didn't need to. The responses came fast. "You're not crazy. My mom did this too. Document everything." One private message stopped me cold. "If the voice is clearly identifiable and linked to financial action, you have legal grounds. Don't let them erase the paper trail. Follow it." I reread that message 5 times. My hand trembled, not from fear, but because something inside me had shifted. I wasn't documenting just for myself anymore. This was evidence. This was a voice captured, unspun, and undeniable. Dylan stepped back into the studio with a coffee mug and handed it to me without a word. He didn't say, "I'm sorry," or "That's awful." He didn't need to. Just existing in the same room as the truth felt like enough. "I think we release more," I said, staring at the blinking cursor on the file name. "Are you sure?" he asked. This could blow everything open." "Good," I whispered. I hit save. Not long after, while I was labeling the folder as inheritance, proof, the door creaked. Chloe. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. She had on one of those oversized hoodies that screamed careless confidence, but her gaze flickered toward the computer screen. She heard the recording before she saw it. My mother's voice played again, filling the room like smoke from an unseen fire. "She won't fight back. She never does." Chloe's jaw slackened. "You wouldn't." I didn't flinch. I already did. Her lips parted like she wanted to scream, but nothing came out. She backed away slowly, the way someone does when they realize they've stepped into a trap with no clear edges. As the door clicked shut behind her, I felt a strange calm settle over me. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't begging. I had a voice now, and I knew exactly how to use it. I didn't plan to make her cry, but the truth doesn't care about plans. The courthouse filing center buzzed with fluorescent lights and the rustle of tired paper. I sat across from Mr. Reese, a pen in hand, staring down at the declaration that would make everything real. My signature was already on the affidavit. One stroke left. Claiming the studio wasn't just about property, it was about drawing the first line in a war I hadn't asked for, but could no longer walk away from. He passed me the final document. "This formalizes your intent to retain the property. Once it's in the system, the 10-day timer starts." My hand trembled slightly, but I signed it anyway. The pressure of ink sinking into paper felt heavier than the moment deserved. "Let the timer start," I said quietly. We shook hands. No ceremony, no fanfare. Just two people who knew the weight of proof. Dylan waited for me outside holding 2 coffees. His smile was cautious, but when I held up the stamped envelope, he exhaled like he'd been holding his breath all morning. "Ready to kick dust?" he asked. I nodded. More like flip every stone. By afternoon, we were back at the studio. Dylan had his laptop open, tapping away at a secured drive we'd created. He'd already emailed an auditor friend who specialized in fraud cases, said she was willing to work pro bono. "People don't realize until they're ruined," she'd written back. "But you saw the rot early." That's rare. I felt it then resolve. Not rage. Not even grief. Just the clarity of knowing this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about correction. We documented everything: receipts, transaction dates, voice memos. The audio files Grandpa had left were now organized and labeled. I attached screenshots, voice-to-text transcripts, and Chloe's own social media posts. It felt like building a court case from the ashes of my own name. At one point, I ran out for printer ink. 10 minutes tops. When I came back, something felt off. The second drawer was open, just slightly. My legal file slightly askew. I hadn't left it that way. Then I smelled Chloe's perfume. Something sugary and sharp, lingering like a threat no one had the guts to say out loud. I said nothing. Just closed the drawer, double-locked the door. That evening, back at the Hale house, I crossed paths with Linda in the hallway. She didn't waste time. "You're hurting the family," she said, voice low but loaded. I met her gaze without flinching. "You already bled me dry. I'm just counting the wounds." She blinked, and for the first time in weeks, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Not guilt, not fear. Just the realization that I was no longer the quiet one. Later, Chloe found the legal folder I'd left on the studio desk by accident. She didn't confront me directly. Not until the hallway. Her voice cracked through the silence. "You think this will make anyone love you more?" I didn't respond. "You think they'll take your side? You think anyone's on your side?" She was holding a photo frame, one of those overly posed family portraits with perfect smiles and pretense baked into every pixel. She hurled it at the wall. The glass exploded, shards raining like judgment. My face in the photo was split down the middle. The sound echoed longer than her breath. She stood there, chest heaving, and for a moment I saw a different kind of broken in her, not victorious, not cruel, just hollow. I walked past her without a word. That night when I left the studio, I found the scratch. It carved across the driver's side of my car like someone had pressed a key into it and dragged it with purpose. The side mirror was bent, hanging by a thread of plastic. There were no cameras in that alley, no witnesses, just the ugly mark and a note under the windshield wiper. 4 letters. Back down. When they hit back, it wasn't subtle, but panic never is. Dean Harrison didn't look at me when he closed the door behind us. He just gestured to the seat across from his desk hands, folded tightly on a printed form that bore my full name in bold font. I didn't have to squint to see the words concerns over erratic emotional behavior. It read like a slap, dressed in administrative tone. "I wanted to meet privately," he said, his voice measured. "A complaint was submitted this morning. It alleges outbursts concerning conduct. We're obligated to assess if you're okay." My pulse ticked against my throat. "Outburst," I echoed, almost laughing. "Who submitted it?" "It was anonymous," he said, though his eyes shifted just slightly. Of course it was. Anonymous, like the scratches on my car, like the note that vanished after the wind carried it away. Anonymous, like everything they did until it burned. I nodded, offered the most polite smile I could fabricate. "I'll cooperate." "I have no history of instability. You're a strong student," he said, softer now. "Just stay focused." "Okay." I thanked him, left the office, and walked straight to the studio. The lock clicked behind me like a seal tightening around my spine. I sat on the floor, fingers curled around my phone as if bracing for an aftershock. Dylan was already there, hunched over his laptop, frustration all over his face. "Chloe's been busy," he said grimly. "She's DMing people we both know. Telling them you're spiraling, that you're unstable, that the family's worried." My stomach sank. Did anyone reply? One blocked her, he said. The rest, either silence or they ghosted you. Of course they did. Chloe knew how to paint me out of my own story. I rubbed my eyes. Let them talk. They'll learn. He hesitated. You sure you're okay? I almost said yes, but the truth was, I didn't know what okay even looked like anymore. My world had been refitted with surveillance, silence, and strategy. I was playing chess with ghosts, and the board kept shifting under my feet. The phone rang. Unknown number. Normally I'd let it slide, but something in my gut said, don't. I answered. A low voice hissed through the line. Be careful digging graves. Sometimes you fall in. The line cut before I could breathe a reply. I stared at the screen for a full minute before Dylan noticed the tremble in my hand. What was that? I shook my head. Just another shadow. Later that evening, I paced between boxes of archived files and Grandpa's tapes, searching for grounding. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text. Mrs. Gaines, your mother, did the same to your uncle years ago. I have files. I froze. My uncle, the one, no one mentioned the one whose photo vanished from our mantle when I was 10. I typed back, what kind of files? She didn't answer right away, but I knew something was coming. And then, as if fate wanted to flex, another email popped in from the estate management office. Subject line, trust freeze petition, filed by Linda Mercer. I clicked throat tightening. Linda's reasoning, ongoing concerns regarding the claimant's psychological fitness. Attached was a request to halt all property transfer proceedings until a mental health evaluation was conducted. I read it twice. Then again. My hands went cold. She's trying to legally erase me, I whispered. Dylan swore under his breath, then muttered, they're not even hiding it anymore. I stared at the screen. My mother had moved her chess piece, sacrificed a daughter to protect a lie. Grandpa would have called it a bluff. Or maybe the sacrifice of a knight to expose the king. As if on cue, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a Dropbox link from Mrs. Gaines. Title, Linda Mercer. Trust. Alteration. 2016. PDF. It wasn't just paper. It was power with my name on it. The storm had rolled in before we reached the studio. Thunder grumbled overhead like something ancient and bitter had woken up. Dylan swung the flashlight toward the attic ladder, then glanced at me. You sure it's up there? He told me to check the walls, I said, brushing rainwater from my sleeve. It wasn't a metaphor. We climbed in silence. The attic smelled like wood rot and forgotten time, like secrets that had waited too long to be known. Dust clawed at my throat. I knelt near the back wall, fingers skimming across the insulation. My palms itched. My gut buzzed. There was something here. Dylan helped peel back a corner of the fiberglass. The flashlight flickered once. Then, tin. A rusted box wedged behind the panel, sealed with black tape that looked decades old. I pulled it out, hands trembling. Inside a folded document and a heavy cream-colored envelope. I opened the letter first. Grandpa's writing, neat as ever, to Sabrina Hale. If they ever silence your name, speak mine louder. This studio is yours always was. This deed proves it. Signed Edward Mercer, notarized Feb. 2, 2020. Dylan's breath caught. This changes everything. I nodded, though my mind hadn't caught up yet. I handed him the deed. The paper was thick, official, my name typed cleanly in the ownership section along with Grandpa's original signature. No edits, no loopholes, just truth in ink. Lightning flashed, casting the attic in brief white fire. We need Reese, I said. We rushed downstairs, carefully sheltering the box under Dylan's jacket. I dialed Mr. Reese's number with shaking fingers. He picked up after 2 rings. When I told him what we'd found, he inhaled sharply. That's the original deed? Yes. And the notarized letter. I need to see photos immediately, he said. But if it checks out, it nullifies the petition to freeze the trust. That document predates any amendments. It's legally binding. I sent the photos. Within minutes, he confirmed, "This deed is your anchor. Guard it." I was still holding the paper when the studio door burst open. Chloe. Her eyeliner was smudged, hair wet from the storm, eyes wild. She didn't ask permission. She never had. "What are you doing?" she demanded, spotting the papers on the table. "What you were too busy posing to do," I said calmly. "Reading." She lunged forward, hand swiping toward the envelope. I stepped between her and the table. "Don't," I said. "That's not yours. It always was." She looked at Dylan as if expecting backup. He didn't move. "This is pathetic," she spat. "You think filming some dramatized?" I walked past her, pinned the deed to the cork wall with thumbtacks, and picked up my phone. Then I hit record. "My name is Sabrina Hale," I said, "and as of October 6th, this studio legally belongs to me." I held the camera steady as the storm hissed against the windows behind me. This space was given to me by Edward Mercer, my grandfather. And this document is proof. Signed, sealed, and untouched. Chloe stood frozen. Effective now, this space is legally mine. And so is my voice. I lowered the phone. The silence in the room felt earned. Chloe took a step back, face pale. I looked into the lens one last time and smiled. "Let's begin." They thought I'd walk in shaking. I walked in with a binder and a smile. The fluorescent lights inside courtroom B flickered overhead, but I didn't flinch. The carpet was a dull beige, the walls lined with plaques and tired paint, everything designed to numb emotion. Fine. I didn't come here to feel. I came to prove. I took my seat next to Mr. Reese. He gave me a slight nod, then opened his leather folder. Across the aisle sat my mother face, stiff with calculation, dressed in a muted gray suit that didn't match her lipstick. Chloe was beside her, scrolling through her phone like the whole proceeding bored her. The clerk called our case Hale versus Hale, motion to unfreeze trust and property access. Judge Morales entered, a composed woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no tolerance for theatrics. Opening statements, she said. Linda's lawyer, a man with a voice slicker than his hair, stood first. "Your Honor, we argue that Miss Hale, though biologically entitled, is emotionally unfit to manage property or inheritance at this time. She is a non-contributing dependent, recently exhibiting erratic behavior, shutting herself away, abandoning family obligations, and displaying signs of emotional volatility." I watched Linda nod solemnly, as if his words were scripture. Chloe smirked. Mr. Reese stood slowly. "Your Honor, we contend that Miss Hale is not only fit, but the intended legal beneficiary of the property in question. We will submit documentation supporting her claim, including a notarized letter from the late Mr. Edward Mercer and supporting financial records." Judge Morales turned to me. "Miss Hale, do you have anything to add?" I stood binder in hand. "Yes, Your Honor. I have an audio recording tax statements covering the studio property from 2018 through 2022. All paid by Edward Mercer, and the notarized letter affirming his intent." I walked forward, each step deliberate. Judge Morales motioned for the bailiff. "Load the audio," she said. The courtroom quieted. The clip played. Grandpa's voice crackled, full and firm. "This space is hers. That's final. If you're hearing this, it means someone tried to steal what I gave. Don't let them." When the clip ended, the room remained silent like it had heard a sermon. Chloe leaned toward the mic. "That could have been faked," Miss Hale, the judge, said sharply. "You are not counsel. One more interruption and I'll clear the room." Chloe's mouth shut. Her hand curled around her phone like a weapon. "Mr. Reese placed the printed tax records and notarized letter on the clerk's table. "We request temporary full access for Miss Hale while the documents are further authenticated." Judge Morales took a long moment scanning the papers, then looked straight at me. "This court grants the motion. Miss Hale shall have temporary full access to the studio and property assets, effective immediately pending final verification of documentation authenticity." Linda's expression didn't crack, but her eyes did. Chloe stared at the wall, teeth clenched. When the gavel fell, I exhaled for the first time. Outside, the sun had finally broken through the clouds. Dylan stood near the benches, arms crossed, waiting for me. with a look that said more than any words. As we walked down the courthouse steps, Chloe stormed behind me and hissed, "You're not done." I turned without hesitation, calm as ever. "No, I said you are." She stopped walking, her mouth twitched, eyes narrowing, not in anger, in fear. Linda, a few steps behind her, didn't speak. She just watched me, unmoving. Her face was a painting. No longer bold or righteous, just pale and tight as though the brushstroke had slipped. For the first time I saw it. Not her power, her panic. It's funny. When they fall, it's always louder than you thought. It started with an email. A simple notification from the fraud investigation team at First River Bank. Your inquiry has prompted a review. Card ending in 2193 is now revoked. We have found that the account was opened using a falsified social security number linked to your name. Thank you for your vigilance. I stared at it for a long moment, letting the words sink in like syrup over a wound. Chloe's lifeline gone. The card that funded her pastel lifestyle, her spa days, her hollow generosity, dead in a keystroke. Dylan slid the screen of his laptop toward me, ready to post it. We were at the studio. Afternoon light filtered through the old curtains, catching the dust in midair like quiet confetti. On the screen was the final edit of the March tape, the one where Mom's voice said, without a hint of guilt, she doesn't fight back. She never does. Use her name if it gets the approval. I'll cover it. Upload, I whispered. And just like that, it was public. The podcast picked it up in 2 hours. When Parents Steal Financial Abuse and the Invisible Children, hosted by a local journalist who'd once been in foster care. The clip played halfway through the episode, followed by my short statement, anonymous but undeniable. The next day, it trended. Not nationally, not virally, but loud enough. Loud enough for Linda's employer to take notice. The local firm issued a bland statement about reviewing internal allegations of misconduct and misuse of personal assets. It sounded like what it was. The first thread pulled from a sweater that no longer wanted to stay intact. Linda didn't call. Chloe did. At 7:22 p.m. on October 14th, she stormed into the studio like she owned the air. I was at my desk with my back turned editing more audio when the door slammed shut behind her. "You think this is noble?" she shouted. "You just humiliated your whole family." I didn't stand. I didn't raise my voice. I just swiveled my chair and looked at her. Really looked. Her hair was unbrushed, her eyeliner smudged. She looked brittle. "Did you use my college ID number when you applied for that Nordstrom card?" I asked calmly. Her eyes widened, for a split second just enough. "You have no proof." "I do!" She lunged. The slap landed across my cheekbone, stinging, but not shocking. What stunned her, though, was the red light blinking on the camera behind her. Dylan stepped out from the back room. "It's still recording." Chloe froze. Her chest rose and fell. You can leave now," I said. She didn't move. "Or I'll post this too." Her hand dropped from the air like it weighed 100 pounds. She turned on her heel and stormed out, leaving the door half open, her breath still swirling in the cold air she brought in. I touched the spot where her hand had landed. It didn't burn. It didn't ache. It validated everything. That night, I posted one image, the freeze frame from the recording, with the caption, "Some truths don't need lawyers. Just light." In the comments, strangers wrote things like, "This happened to my sister too," or "You're braver than you think." Others just sent heart emojis or links to support groups or podcasts. One message came from an anonymous account. "Thank you for saying what most of us can't." Another came from Mrs. Gaines. It was an email. Subject line. "She tried the same with your uncle. I kept receipts. Want them." Body karma never forgets an address. "Neither do I." I replied within seconds. "Yes, please." Then I sat back in the studio under the same ceiling Grandpa had built with his own hands, and for the first time in months, I felt something close to quiet. Not peace, but its cousin. Maybe dignity, because the cracks had finally become breaks. And once a dam breaks, the water doesn't ask permission. What breaks faster, credit or pride? I heard whispers before I saw faces. In town by the pharmacy, a woman I barely knew lowered her sunglasses and said nothing, but her smirk told me she'd read the article. I walked past grocery aisles that used to be full of anonymous glances. Now I was the silent headline. The girl who didn't shout, didn't fight, just recorded. Linda's office door had been shut since Tuesday. Administrative leave, someone muttered behind a row of boxed folders. No one said the word disgrace, but it clung to her perfume like a ghost. The receptionist wouldn't meet my eyes when I passed by. Her pity wasn't for me. It was for the illusion that cracked under her desk lamp. Chloe, on the other hand, wasn't hiding. She marched through the town center like the world owed her a stage. I saw her laughing with two girls outside the coffee shop, but their eyes were cold. Her laugh didn't echo, it dropped. Later that day, her name vanished from two group chats. One admin publicly posted, "We don't tolerate deception, even in pretty packaging." I screenshotted it. Not for evidence, just satisfaction. On Wednesday, Dylan met with Mr. Patel behind the studio. The man didn't say much, just handed over a sealed box labeled retrieved property and nodded once. It was my old PC. Mine again. When I ran my fingers along its surface, I felt like I was holding evidence of theft, of return, of myself. That night, I powered it up. Inside, nothing had been wiped. Photos I took sophomore year, my saved work, my encrypted voice memos. I'd been told I was paranoid for backing everything up twice, but paranoia, it seemed, had teeth. One folder was named June Swipe. I hadn't created it, but it contained receipts, digital copies Chloe forgot to delete. All in my name. Then came the op-ed. She didn't break. She recorded 4 columns of dissecting my silence. It wasn't pity. It was power. When I first read it, my hands trembled. Not from nerves, but because someone had finally said it out loud. I was never invisible. I was watching. And now, so were they. It spread like spilled ink. Shares, screenshots, messages from strangers. You made me brave. Of course, backlash followed. Chloe tried to flip the narrative. Claimed Dylan pressured me. She posted vague stories, black and white selfies, teary captions, the classic manipulation script. She shared cropped screenshots, cherry-picked messages. But Dylan came prepared. One drive folder, time-stamped conversations, full context. It took him 3 minutes to shred her entire accusation. 3 minutes, and she unfollowed him from every platform. That night, I found a crumpled note under the studio door. No envelope, just ink messy and rushed. You were always watching. I should have known. There was no name, but I didn't need one. The handwriting, the desperation, it stank of Chloe. And yet something in it ached, like a child who realized the mirror talks back. The next morning, Linda showed up at the grocery store. I stood in line. She stood 2 aisles over, gripping a bouquet of bruised tulips. She didn't approach, but I saw the flicker of her hand, the way she clenched the stems until petals fell. She looked up once. Her eyes didn't find mine. They wandered, like someone looking for an exit. Friday morning, 2 plain-dressed officers arrived at the Hale house. I watched from the studio window across the street as they handed over 2 cream-colored envelopes, civil suit notices. Embezzlement, identity theft. The porch light flickered. No one cried. No one screamed. But I imagined the sound of glass cracking. Linda stood still for a full minute before stepping back inside. Chloe hovered behind her, pale and unreadable. She glanced over her shoulder toward my studio. For once, she didn't flip her hair. She looked empty. That afternoon, Dylan didn't say much. He just sat beside me, scrolling headlines while the rain tapped against the windows. Somewhere in the hum of storm and breath, I finally felt it that the center of gravity had shifted. I wasn't a daughter anymore. Not theirs. Not broken. Just my own. Somewhere between updates and silence, I said it. The real trial's just begun. There's a silence only survivors hear. It's not peace. It's proof. The studio smelled different now. Less like dust, more like breath. Sunlight carved narrow bands across the wooden floor, pooling at the base of the old desk. The air hung quiet, heavy, with something I hadn't let myself name until now. Closure. The teacup beside me had long gone cold. I hadn't touched it since the kettle hissed 2 hours ago. I didn't come for comfort. I came to listen. On the desk sat one envelope, still sealed. My name printed in Grandpa's looping cursive. I hadn't opened it. Not yet. Maybe I feared what it might end or begin. It felt like the last unopened box in a house that had already collapsed. The recorder blinked red. My voice didn't tremble this time. I didn't fight to win. I fought to stop losing. My own words felt foreign. Not dramatic, not defiant, just final. They sat in the air like dust motes, quiet, visible, undeniable. A vibration nudged my palm. Dylan's name lit the screen. His message short, "You did it your way. That's rare. And enough." I smiled. He always knew when to step back without vanishing. A quiet ally in a world of noise. We hadn't seen each other in 3 days, but not once did I feel alone. His kind of loyalty didn't knock, it stood guard from the shadows. Outside, the wind curled through thinning trees. Inside, I remembered. 12 years old. Autumn. I brought home a poem, just 10 lines, nothing grand. I left it on the kitchen counter. By morning, it was gone. Thrown out. I saw it crumpled beside orange peels. Linda told me not everything needed to be shared, that some things embarrassed the family. But Grandpa, he picked it up, smoothed it out without a word. Later, I found it tucked between pages of his chess book, marked with a yellow sticky note. Some truths take time. He was the only one who ever made silence feel like safety. I pulled out the cassette player from the drawer, the same drawer that had once held so many secrets, so many truths hidden in rusted hinges. I loaded the tape I'd nearly worn out this past week. Click. A soft whir. Grandpa's voice filled the room again. "Don't make them pay. Make them listen." I closed my eyes. Let it wash over me. Not all inheritances come in dollars. Some come as echoes. The silence in the room was the kind that demanded reverence. It wasn't emptiness, it was aftermath. The kind that settles when the shouting's over, when the verdict's in, and the dust dares not rise again. I leaned back in Grandpa's old swivel chair. It creaked like it always had, a familiar protest that made me feel 12 again. Back when I'd sit here and watch him mark up blueprints or reread the same faded pages of history books. He believed in paper, the permanence of ink. That belief had become mine too. The wall across from me was now bare. I'd stripped it of all the family photos they tried to co-opt, frames where Chloe smiled wide and I was barely in focus. I'd replaced them with pinned legal notices, printouts of messages and transcripts. Evidence, not trophies. But this space wasn't a war room anymore. It was a beginning. I glanced at the corner of the studio where my PC once stood. The very one they sold without asking. It was almost poetic how something taken without consent started a journey no one could now stop. Dylan had offered to help me build a new one. Bigger. Faster. "Yours," he said. I declined. Not because I didn't want it, but because I didn't need the machine anymore to prove I was real. I had my voice, my records, my story. Grandpa once told me, "Truth doesn't echo in the room, it echoes in the people who walk out of it changed." And as the sun dipped below the window frame, casting long orange stripes across the desk, I knew I wasn't the same girl who walked in weeks ago with trembling hands and second guesses. I had stood up not just to them, but to the part of myself that once believed being quiet meant being safe. The truth was louder than I'd ever been. And now, it had a home. I reached over, rested my fingertips on the envelope one last time. The paper felt warm, like it had soaked up every ounce of light in the room. Then I stood and walked to the shelf, picked up Grandpa's pocket watch. It had stopped ticking the week he died. I never bothered to wind it until today. Twist, click, tick, tick. I placed it in the center of the desk. Let it mark this moment. Then I sat down, opened my laptop, and created a new document. Scholarship Fund Proposal. The Hale Studio. They once erased me with silence. I answered with a signature. The lake was still that morning, like glass too afraid to ripple. Mist rolled slow across the surface, as if it too had nowhere else to be. I stepped onto the porch barefoot, coffee in hand, breath clouding into the dawn. There was no anger left in my lungs, only the strange weight of calm, the kind that arrives after the war ends, but before anyone's begun to clean. The letter lay open in my lap, edges soft from rewriting. I'd written versions in my head for years, screaming ones, begging ones, but none ever felt right. Until this one. Dear Mom, I began pressing pen to paper like a wound to cloth. I didn't fight for the money. I fought for your truth. The one buried between bank statements and birthday dinners where no one made eye contact. The one you never let see the light because it might burn through the fabric you kept so carefully pressed. I wrote slowly, letting every word land. You told me silence keeps the peace. But silence was your armor, and it made me invisible. The pen stuttered slightly at that line. I didn't cross it out. I let it bleed. I know you wanted me small, manageable, easier than grief or guilt or questions you didn't want to answer. But I learned how to live loud, how to speak even when it shakes me. I signed it. Sabrina Hale. Just a name. But now, it meant something. The tin box sat by the door, same one Grandpa gave me years ago, back when he told me to store things that matter more than they hurt. Inside, already waiting, were the layers of who I had been, the studio deed. The poem Linda tore up when I was 10, the receipt for my PC they sold without asking, and now this letter. I walked down to the oak tree barefoot. The ground was cold and damp, but it didn't bite. Just reminded me I was alive. I dug the hole slowly, reverently. Not a burial, a planting. The lid clicked shut like punctuation. And I whispered, that's the final line. Behind me, my phone buzzed from the porch. A text from Celeste friends giving it mine? You coming? I stared at it for a second, then typed back, I'll bring dessert. And peace. Peace. What a strange word. Heavy. Earned. I looked out at the lake again. It didn't sparkle, didn't shift, just existed, like me. The wind moved gently through the oak branches above. Leaves rustled a soft applause maybe. Or maybe just the sound of the world exhaling. The camera of life. If there was one, would have panned out right then, catching the last steam rising from my cup, the grass still disturbed from where I knelt, and the tin box tucked deep beneath roots older than any lie. I didn't need revenge. I had the truth. And breath. Sometimes I still hear her voice moms in the back of my mind, correcting my posture, critiquing my tone, rewriting my memories with hers. But it fades faster now. Each time I speak my own version aloud, hers grows quieter. It no longer anchors me. It haunts less. I don't expect Linda to apologize, or Chloe to understand. People raised to win don't always know what losing with grace looks like. They just see it as giving up. But I didn't give up. I let go. Dylan once told me healing isn't loud, it's patient, like paint drying, or bread rising, or silence turning into music again. He was right. His message this morning had been short, just a voice clip. You rewrote the ending. No one can take that from you. I replayed it once, then deleted it. Not out of bitterness, but because I didn't need reminders. I lived it. Later today, I'd bake that pumpkin bread and show up at Celeste's with something more than dessert. I'd bring space, a new kind of space. One no longer filled with apology or proof of survival, but ease, and maybe laughter, maybe rest. Home, I realized, wasn't a house, or even a studio. It was that moment on the porch where I chose how the story closed. Not with fury, not with noise, but with a signature. As I stood to go inside, a single leaf drifted down from the oak and landed near the disturbed soil. I bent down, pressed it flat in my journal beside the letters page. Proof that even endings grow something. Maybe that's what Grandpa meant. Maybe silence isn't an absence. It's a frame for whatever comes next. If you've made it here, thank you. I didn't win a war. I walked away from one and chose truth instead. If something in my silence or my fight reminded you of your own, say it out loud. To me, to someone, to yourself. They tried to erase me with gaslight and guilt, but I documented. I remembered. I spoke. So if you're watching someone rewrite your story, take the pen back. Quiet strength is still strength. Your story matters, even the parts they wanted forgotten. Leave a comment. Tell me which part hit home. And never let anyone steal your name.